Ah, okay. I have to figure out a way to get rid of that hover of that helper text. Hey my friends, how are you doing tonight? Wazoo back here with another part in our Build an Avatar API with Java Spring Boot. This is episode 2, numero duo. Okay, so in the first episode, just as a quick recap, with the link available here to the previous one, is we generated our project with the Spring initializer, start.spring.io. We added the project to Git. We set up an H2 database and configured the avatar data model and repository, and took a quick peek at using H2 console and what it can give you, and set up a REST controller for handling CRUD operations, create, read, update, and delete. And we tested the controller with both curl and postman. So in this episode, we're going to go through a few different updates. We're going to be adding some enum types to avatar, to the avatar model, to give us a way of providing strict support for things like race type and class type. So things like paladin, warrior, hunter, paladin, or I already said paladin, druid, ranger, and race types like human, dwarf, elf, halfling, whatever you want to add into your avatar model. Then we'll be going through and adding a user model, and so this is very similar to what we just did with avatar, only this will give us a way of allowing users to sign up to this service and then generate a list of avatars through each user account, which entails setting up a one-to-many relationship between user and avatar. And we'll be looking at setting up the new REST controller for user, as well as needing to modify what we've got with avatar. Cool, I can't wait. Let's get started. Okay, so we're on my GitHub website here, ericuzwa/Spring Boot Avatar API. I'll put all the links to everything in the description down below. And you'll notice that we have got some releases set up on my Git repository. And so that's what I would like to start today's video from, is instead of doing a git clone, which is the normal procedure for working with a Git code repository, I want to instead just download this, go into the releases and go into the initial project release and download the source code zip file. And then that way you'll get everything taken at the last snapshot where we finished off last episode. If you come into the code base and just do a git clone of the current state, it may be a whole lot newer or different than what we're covering in this video today. So it might throw you if you're trying to follow along in the code and then we're going through different things in the video, just because it depends on when you're seeing this video versus when I'm recording it. Anyway, I think that made sense. So just download the source file from either of these two zip file folders and you'll be good to go. Okay, so now we're back in our project. We're in Visual Studio Code, and we're picking up right where we left off in the code base from the last video. So first what we're going to do is just refresh ourselves where things sit and run the actual service. And then let's go into Postman. Okay, so let's send a post in Postman and just refresh ourselves. We've got our name, our ID, our name, our type, health points, mana points, date created, and date modified, date timestamps. Very cool. Okay, so let's first of all take a look at getting into race type and class type. So first thing, within the models folder, we're going to add a new, not a new folder, we're going to add a new file, and we'll just give it, we'll call it classtype.java. Okay, and it'll be an enum. And then what we're going to be doing is we'll just define a few classes that we can use from our avatar data model. So let's say let's start with paladin, and we'll start with thief, and we'll come up with wizard, maybe a mage. I hope I'm not triggering anyone by not doing this in alphabetical order. Anyways, and let's go with druid, and Ranger. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll store the actual value of the type we are as a string. Okay, and then we will create a getter for that using Lombok. Okay, let's do import everything there, control dot. Okay, and then we want to create a private constructor just to instantiate when we try to set a all these pop-ups everywhere. Okay, Visual Studio Code, come on. Okay, and then we'll create an override to this object, which it'll help us. You'll see shortly when we start displaying this enum in our logs. It'll help us output this into the log file. So we'll do toString and return this dot get value. Excellent. Okay, so that all looks good, and we will do, since we're in here now, we will do the same thing for race type. And we will again call it an enum, and this will be let's say human elf, dwarf. Again, I'm not really doing this in alphabetical order, sorry. And let's go with orc, just for funsies. Okay, and then same thing as before, and you know what? We can just copy the getter, the constructor, and the toString. We'll do that right here, and rename this, of course, to race type. Okay. Control dot to import the getter. Okay, looks good. So now what we're going to have to do is go back into our avatar data model, and let's fix up the type here. We're going to rename type to use the enum. Let's see, class type, and we'll just call it class type. And this is the enumerated. We have to give it the enumerated annotation, and we're going with a string because underneath the covers it is a string. Whoops. Okay, let's resolve those. Okay, and then we want to do the same thing for race type. So we want a getter, we want a setter, we want an enumerated, oh my gosh, enumerated enum type, oops, string. Okay, and we want a private race type. Okay, everything's resolved. Okay, good. So then now what we're going to have to do, of course, is update our output here to class type and add another line here to display our race type. Plus race type plus. Okay. So we've fixed up our data model. Now we're going to have to look at our controller, because there's a few places where we reference the get type right here. So set class type, get class type. So let's add some support for race type. So set race type, new avatar, get race type. Okay, and that's for creating the new avatar. And let's see, do we have to do in the get? But in the put, we're gonna have to do that. So let's update the put with, remember we're getting the optional object of avatar, then calling the set class type, and then new avatar get class type. And we'll do the same thing for race type. Set race type, new avatar get race type. Okay, perfect. Let's see, are we using it anywhere else? Okay. It does not look like it. Okay. Whoops. Okay, everything looks good. Let's save and restart the server. It should have restarted by now, so let's go ahead and post. Okay, and so we get a class type of druid and a race type of human. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so then we want to update. Let's change this to a put, and we want to update avatar 1 with a, let's see, ranger and an elf. Whoops. Okay, and we'll try sending that. And there we go. We've updated class type and race type. Okay, awesome. Well done. Okay, so next step will be let's open up Git, and what we're going to do is create a branch. Right now, if we type in git status, we can see that we've touched the controller and the avatar model file, and we've added those two files there. So what we're going to do, instead of just keeping everything in the main trunk Git branch, we're going to create a new branch, git checkout -b, and then we'll just call this avatar API 2. So now we've switched to a new working branch, and this is a safe way to work on your projects when you're using with Git. That way you're not potentially messing up some existing code that you've already got that works. When you're kind of trying out new ideas, new experiments, you want to keep them kind of in their own sandbox, and that way if things don't work out the way you thought they would, then you haven't lost anything that originally worked. So this is a much safer way to organize your code. So we're now in our new branch. If we type in git branch, we now see that we're in avatar API 2. So let's do a git add, and let's get everything committed. Git commit -m. Let's see, updated or added class type and race type. Okay, perfect. So now let's go back, and we will go to create a user data model. And the setup for a user data model is very similar to what we went through with our avatar data model. Okay, let's give ourselves a little more room here. So what I'm gonna do, just to save us a little bit of time, is cut and paste what we've got on the avatar side. Yoink. And of course we'll change everything. So our public class will implement serializable still. We'll still have a long ID using generation strategy auto. Okay, we'll have a name, so this will be our username. So I'll just call this username. And we won't have a getter or a race type. We won't have health points or mana points. We will have date created and date modified. And let's see, we don't need a constructor right now. ToString, let's see, we've got a username. And let's get rid of all this. We've got a date created, date modified, and we're working with a user. Okay, that all looks good. So our username is also our login for this example, and then why don't we do a getter and setter for a password hash. So we'll just call it password hash. Okay. We won't, I mean, it'll be a password hash, so just for now we'll display it in the JSON coming back. But more often than not, you don't really want to do it this way. You kind of just want to ignore this when you're displaying it in a client. Okay, We can clean that up. Not using that. Okay. So we've now got a user, and we've now got an avatar. And my plan is that we want to take the user object and reference, create a relationship with the avatar model. And that relationship is what's called in sort of full stack terms as a one-to-many relationship. Because for every one user, we can have many, I don't know why I'm pointing at 5. Okay, anyway, we can have, for every one user, we can have a lot of different, aka many, avatar models belonging to that one user. And each avatar will have a corresponding user object that it belongs to. And so the idea being is that we won't be able to share, at least in our sample here, we won't be able to share any avatars between user models. So if two players just happen to have the same character, the same avatar, then they'll have to each enter it themselves into when using this system. Okay. Hopefully that made sense. Other relationships are things like one-to-one. So for example, say one object corresponds to one other object, and vice versa. And then you've also got a many-to-many relationship. So maybe let's see things like, what's a good example? So maybe things like shopping carts, where you have many objects that exist and they belong to other objects, or they belong to multiple other objects. There's not a single a single relationship between one object and the other that we see between avatar and users. Okay. So let's. So another change I want to make is usually I try to follow similar conventions in most of my full stack applications, and what I like to do is name the database tables, give them a pluralized name from what the object is that defines it in the code. So what I mean is, for user, I want to create the table name as users. And I want to do the same thing for avatar, where I want to create the data name as avatars. So I'm going to stop the server and just right click and delete our existing data folder. Okay, and then let's go ahead and restart everything. Okay, and then let's go back. Oh. What happened here? Table cannot be resolved to a type. Oh, okay, of course. So I didn't pull in. Okay, silly mistake. Okay, so let's try this again. And it'll start everything up. And let's assume the database was created. So remember, our password was admin. Okay, now we can see here we've got an avatars, the updated table name for avatars, which has our ID, class type, date created, date modified, mana points, race type, and then we've also got, oh, whoops, we'll have to clear that. We've also got users, and our users has a date created, date modified, password hash, and username. Excellent. So now what we can do is start filling out and creating a controller. First we'll need to make a repository for the user. So let's call that user repository. And we'll make that an interface, and we'll just copy exactly what we did for avatar and do that for user. Excellent. Okay. So now let's fix all the imports. Dun dun dun. Okay. Okay. So far, so good. Okay. So at this point, we should really definitely put that into source control. So type in git status. We're adding the user model as well as the user repository, and we've updated the avatar model. So we're going to add this work and say added user data model. Okay, perfect. Let's go back to our server. Okay, so now what we need to do is look at creating the actual relationship. We're going to define that relationship. So in the user model, okay, why don't we just drop it in right here after our last column. Okay, so what I want to do is within the user model, we want to create a one-to-many relationship. Okay, we're going to set up a mapped by user field, and so this will create like a user ID link between the two objects. We're going to define a fetch of fetch type lazy, cascade equals cascade type all. Okay, and then we're going to do a private. We're going to control all our avatars in a hash set. And I think we might need to add getters and setters to this, but let's try and get this. Oops. Okay. Import set. Okay, import set. Whoops. Okay, clean up that. Okay. So then now, in the avatar data model, since it now belongs to a parent object, okay, so let's do a many-to-one definition. Fetch equals fetch type dot lazy. Optional, if I could type, optional equals false. Okay, and then we want to set up a join column between the two tables, and we'll be using a column called user ID, which cannot be false, and store the user this way as a user object. And again, we might need getter and setter. Okay, so let's go ahead and restart the server. And things should be restarting properly. Now, of course, nothing will work from our controller because we're kind of we're not yet taking into account that we now have a user object that needs to be passed into the creation of our avatar object. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to create a user controller. I think we'll create a user controller and then update the avatar controller. So let's go ahead and in the controllers folder, let's create a new file to represent our user controller. Okay, and it'll be a REST controller. And we will use, what did I use last time up here? /API, yep, okay, so we'll use the same request mapping. Okay, perfect. And we'll just copy the log file. or the log setup, and we'll do it for user controller.class. Okay, and then we'll need links to our both user repository and avatar repository. We'll have to do that in both. So let's just go ahead and set them up now here. So let's call this one user repository, and let's go ahead and resolve all these imports. Import, okay, import, just to clean up some of this stuff here. Import org.slf for j, request mapping. Okay, so clean up these. Okay, so we've got a log definition that we're going to be using to, again, just like the avatar controller, we can display some of the logging. And then we're also going to be managing the user repository and avatar repository. Okay, so first let's get all of our users. So we'll do, remember, like what we did last time is or in the avatar model, sorry, is do an API /API /users. Okay, and then that will get a list. So let's do user a list of user, get all users. Okay, and then return user repository find all. Okay, easy. Hopefully that's easy, straightforward at least. Okay. Okay, just resolve all these get and post mappings. I recommend either if it's too distracting with everything popping up while I'm trying to type it in Visual Studio Code, then I'd urge you to at least download the zip file later on from the site. I'll create this as another release, and that way, as we go through the videos in the series, you can just keep downloading the releases on each one. Okay. At any rate, I will now do a post mapping. This will be a create for users. So we want to create a new user. Okay, so we want to do a public user, create user, and let's do request body user new user, kind of like what we did last time. And I think let's just do a user model equals new user. We can copy things over just like we did last time. Model set username new user get username, and we'll set the password. For now, we'll just keep the password hash is actually just whatever plain text you pass into the function, but we'll fix that shortly to actually hash in the password properly that gets submitted. Okay, and then what we want to do is return user repository save model. Okay, so that looks good. Okay, and then what we want to do is let's go for I guess we'll save this first and just sanity check this as safe as it sounds doing it live. Okay, I think we cleared all the references up. Okay, so let's do a post. Let's do a get to API users, and we should have no users, so an empty array. Okay, and then let's do a post, and let's I guess we'll have to define a username. Let's say username wazoo, and then password hash of password. Nice and secure. Okay, so let's send that over and see we've got a new user called wazoo with a password hash of password. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is take a look at, let's see, what's another useful one that we can enter right away. Okay, why don't we do delete. Let's do delete mapping, and it will be for users, and then ID. Okay, and then what we want to do is, for now we'll do nothing, but we'll do a delete user, and then path variable ID is a long ID, and then what we want to do is what we should do down the road or in the future is handle the deletion of all of the child avatar models that are attached to this user. But for now, we're going to user repository delete by ID. Okay. So let's resolve those references for delete and path variable. Yoink. Yoink. Okay, good. So we've got delete, create, and delete. Okay. Now, of course, we still have to actually test something. Okay, so what we're going to do is just test the delete. Let's do that. Okay, so we're making a post, API users. We get an ID of 1. Let's do another one. We'll call this one wazoo2. And we've created wazoo2 with ID 2. And let's go ahead and delete ID 1. Okay, and then we'll do a list. So if we get a list of all the users, we should just see 1. Perfect. Nice. Okay, we're almost there. Okay. Home stretch. I think we're in the home stretch. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is update the controller, the avatar controller, to take when we create something, it's got to take in a user ID to associate with the avatar. So again, we use the auto-wired annotation, and we're pulling in a reference to user repository. We need both in both controllers. There is a better way to do it, or not a better way. There is a slightly cleaner way to do it, which is to create a service that we talk to the controller would communicate with the service instead of directly to the repository. But let's get this all figured out first. Okay, so what we're going to have to do then is okay, we're going to have to get a mapping of okay. I have to figure out a way to get rid of that hover of that helper text, because it's very handy while you're working in it, but it's not quite so handy when you're trying to follow someone else doing it, I expect. Okay, so we want users slash, let's say user ID slash avatars. So that means we'll be doing an API slash users and then a user ID slash avatars. Okay, how does that sound? So we'll do a get all of path variable user ID, which is a long ID. Well, we'll keep everything the same thing. Okay, and then what we'll do is let's return we are going to return an avatar from the avatar repository, find by user ID of user ID. Okay, so this is a little bit of a new reference that we're going to have to throw into our avatar repository interface, but this will allow us to properly link the user ID with the avatar. So if we go into the avatar repository interface, let's create a new let's define a new method here. Let's see, called list of avatar find by user ID, and then long user ID. Okay, and that should be all we need, and we're going to need one more. So an optional avatar find by ID and user ID. So if we want to find an exact, okay, so long, let's say ID and long user ID. Okay, so this will come in handy when we want to find a very specific avatar given a user ID and an avatar ID. Okay, so back into our avatar controller. So this is, we're going to find all of the avatars in the system by the given user ID. Okay. With user ID, and let's spit that out in the log. User ID. Okay. Looks good. All right. So we've got the get all. That's usually the easiest one. Okay, so now we want to do a post, and we're going to do a post to the API users / user ID / avatars. Okay, so we're going to do we're going to add a annotation for @path variable, very similar to what we've been doing already, for user ID, which is a long user ID. Okay, and that will be /users / user ID. Let's see, did I name it properly there? Yep, so we're going to keep this one all the same. Path, oh, it helps if you spell it correctly. Okay. So then what we want to do is, let's see, first we want to grab our user equals user repository find by ID user ID. Okay, so let's, okay, so we've got a copy of our user, and oh yeah, so this is an optional, so we've got to convert this to an optional user. Okay. Okay. So now all we have to do is we could keep all of these setters the same, but what we're going to have to do is, let's assume for now that the user exists that we're trying to create avatars from. So we'll do model set user, and it will be user.get. That should be all we need. Okay, so set user is undefined for the type avatar, probably because, remember, we never set our avatar here. So let's do we'll add in a setter I don't think, well, you know what? I might as well get a getter. Or no. Let's just try a setter for now. Okay, back in our avatar controller. Okay, so everything looks okay. So assuming that the avatar, or assuming that the user can be found, the avatar will do this. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and let's try, everything is restarted. Let's try and creating a user. So let's do this first. So let's post to users. We'll just call it wazoo1, password hash of password. Done. Okay, so an ID of 1. So now what we'll do is we'll send a post to API avatars and then user ID of 1, so users, user ID of 1, and then avatars. Okay, so theoretically, okay, so we get an ID of 2, and we get a name of null, oh, because we didn't pass anything in. Okay, so, and somewhere we should maybe update this to display the user ID. So why don't we do that now, just for our own debugging purposes. So back in our model, let's do we'll add in a user ID equals plus user get ID. Okay. So this will be a way of displaying and tracking the user ID within the avatar. Okay, so let's start from square one. So let's get a list of users, no users. Let's go ahead and create one. Username wazoo1, password hash password. That's created. Okay, and now let's get a list of API /users/1/avatars. Okay, empty, which is good. That's what we expect. Let's do a post, and we want to post to API /users/1/avatars, and let's do name. Let's call it not wazoo1. Let's call it Angel, and Angel is a race type of dwarf, and or an elf. Let's make Angel an elf. Come on, Angel is a great elf name. And then a class type of paladin. If I can spell right, paladin. Okay, let's create that. Done, created. Okay. So, and I don't see the user ID there, but that's all right. Maybe I forgot to restart it in between. Anyway, we'll assume it's there. Okay, so now let's do a get of API users/1/avatars, and we see Angel. Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. It's pretty cool now, right? We've got a real working system. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do the, okay, so we've updated the controller. Okay. So then now what we have to do is update, we're going to have to get a very specific avatar. So let's do a get request to /API /users/user ID /avatars /avatar ID. Well, we'll just leave that as ID. Okay. And then so we'll do /users user ID /avatars ID. So we'll get one path. We'll add another variable here, path variable for user ID, and then long user ID. Okay. And then we can leave that the same, and we'll do an optional user. Actually, I don't even know if we'll need this. Equals let's see, because we've created we have created a way to grab the, I don't think we'll need this. Okay, so we'll do a model equals avatar find by, remember how we added those, we added those methods, find by ID and user ID. So ID is ID and then user ID is user ID. Okay, and then so if that model is present, then return the model again, otherwise return a 404 not found. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, let's let it restart, assuming it started. Okay, so let's start back at the beginning again. Let's get all of our avatars for our users, and we've got empty because we don't have any users at all. Okay, so let's create a new user. Let's see, username, let's do 1, and then password hash, password. Okay, let's created. All right. Okay, now we want to create a avatars, and let's do a name is Angel. Let's do Angel again. Let's do a race type of elf, and let's do a class type of paladin. Could be a mage, could be a paladin, works for either. Okay, so that's created. Angel eyes, okay, Angel paladin. So now let's get, we want to get a list of all the avatars belonging to user 1, which we know works, which is just Angel, and now we want to get the single one. So let's get user 1 and then avatars with ID of 2. Ready for it? Oh yeah! Okay. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Nicely done. Okay, so we have got one API route left to update, and that is the put request to API users 1. Well, I guess also the delete, but the put one is a little bit more. Okay. So let's do put slash users user ID slash avatars slash ID. So again, we'll update the put mapping to go to put users and then user ID and then avatars avatar or slash avatars slash ID. So let's do path variable of user ID in quotes, and it is a type of long user ID. Okay. And then what we want to do is update this request to find by, not by find by ID, but find by no. Okay, this is so long now. We just did it back here. Find by ID and user ID. Okay, find by ID and user ID. Okay, so ID, user ID. Perfect. Okay, so assuming everything is set, we now, assuming we have everything correctly in the request, and we have the user exists, then we just update. We reuse what we had before and just update update everything there. Okay. I'll stop talking about that and let's get back into testing. Okay, so let's do a get. Start from the beginning. Empty. Good. Let's do a post. And let's do, I should really save this so I can cut and paste it. Username. But lucky for you, I'll edit that out. Password hash. Password. Okay. And we see that one is created there. Okay, so now let's create a new avatar. And we will do a name of Angel. And then list time, let's make race type a elf and a class type of mage. Let's go for mage. Okay, so we're posting API users one avatar. Okay, good. So now we want to update it. So let's do the put to /API users /avatars 2, and we want to change from a mage back to a paladin. Sorry, everybody, or sorry for all you mage lovers out there. And paladin. Okay, and so date modified should be 1522, looks about right, or 02.15.22 looks about all right. And let's do a get of the single thing, and we should see angel, paladin, elf. Oh, excellent. Okay, this is coming together. Okay, now finally we can do a delete. Okay, so let's go here and we'll update the delete mapping to be /users /user ID /avatars /ID. So API /users user ID /avatars ID. Okay. Okay, so what we're gonna do is what is the best way to do this? We'll create a path variable for user ID, which is the long of user ID, and we'll have to do a find by. We'll find that model just like we've done it in the past. Whoops. Okay, we'll get that back, I promise. Okay, and then what we will do is whoops, go away. Okay, so avatar find by. Okay, let's do a optional model. Optional avatar model. Okay, and then model.get. Maybe we can just do an avatar repository delete model. Okay. Or model get, sorry. Ah. Okay. So this one could be tricky. Okay, but that makes sense to me. Okay, so we're getting a handle, we're getting the actual avatar tied from the avatar repository found by the ID and user ID, and then we are going to delete that model. So let's go back in here and go back and create back to our post. Okay, whoops. Oh well, whatever. Okay. Didn't break any of the creation. So we'll create one /avatars. So let's post, and we're going to create a new avatar of angel, elf, paladin. Okay, and we've created one here with an ID of 2. So now let's do a get of all of the avatars belonging to user 1, and we've got one there, and let's go ahead and let's create one more. Post avatars, and let's do not angel. Let's do my mind is drawing a blank. Obloria. Okay. Race type elf, and let's finally create our mage. And so now we've got Obloria mage, and then let's do a get and list all the avatars belonging to user 1, and we've got 2 of them listed here, and let's go ahead and delete ID 2. Delete avatars with an ID of 2. We'll send that, and we got a 200 OK, and let's do a get of all the avatars belonging to user 1. And right on. Cha-ching! We see the one remaining avatar we have left belonging to our user 1. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed going through the different controllers to set up the users and avatars belonging to each user. We set up a relationship, a one-to-many relationship between users and avatars, and then on the avatars side, it's a many-to-one to map backwards back to the user that it belongs to. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave a comment, give it a like, subscribe for more videos, and we'll see you next time. Okay, have a great day, everyone. Bye.